The Arizona sun blazed mercilessly overhead as smoke still curled from the charred remains of the Apache village nestled in the rocky canyon. The acrid smell of burning hide and timber hung heavy in the desert air, mixing with the metallic scent of blood that had already begun to attract the buzzards circling high above. It had been 3 days since the cavalry's dawn raid, and the silence that followed was more deafening than any gunfire. Among the scattered debris and bodies, a movement caught the attention of a magnificent Mustang stallion. His coat was the color of burnished copper, with a flowing black mane that rippled in the desert wind. The horse had wandered down from the high country, drawn by some instinct he couldn't name. His nostrils flared as he picked up a scent that made him pause. Something alive, something small and vulnerable. The Mustang moved carefully through the destruction, his hooves silent on the sandy ground. Behind an overturned water vessel, partially hidden beneath a torn blanket, he found her. A young Apache girl, no more than 7 winters, lay curled in a ball, her dark hair matted with dust and dried tears. Her small chest rose and fell in shallow breaths, and her lips were cracked from thirst. She stirred slightly as the Mustang's shadow fell across her face, her dark eyes fluttering open. Fear should have seized her at the sight of the wild horse, but instead she felt a strange calm. The Mustang lowered his great head and nickered softly, a sound that seemed to carry both sympathy and strength. The girl tried to speak, but only a hoarse whisper emerged. "Macho, Shash." The Mustang understood something beyond words. This child needed help, and the nearest source of aid lay miles away at the McKenna ranch. He had observed the solitary rancher from afar, noting the man's gentle way with his own horses, the careful manner in which he tended his land. If anyone could help this broken child, it would be the white man who lived alone in the valley. Carefully, the Mustang knelt beside the girl, his powerful legs folding beneath him. She was so weak that lifting her onto his back took considerable gentleness. As she settled against his neck, clinging to his mane with trembling fingers, he rose slowly and began the long journey toward the ranch. The ride took most of the day, with the Mustang stopping frequently to let the girl rest and sip from the precious water sources he knew along the way. As the sun began to sink toward the western mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, they finally approached the McKenna spread. Sam McKenna was mending a fence post when he saw them coming. At 62, his hair had gone completely grey, and deep lines etched his weathered face, marks left by years of sun, wind, and sorrow. The death of his wife Martha 5 years earlier had left him a shell of his former self, running his small ranch with mechanical precision, but little joy. He straightened slowly, his back protesting the movement, and squinted at the approaching figures. A wild Mustang carrying a rider was unusual enough, but as they drew closer, Sam's breath caught in his throat. The rider was a child, an Apache child, and she appeared to be barely conscious. "Easy now, boy," Sam called softly to the Mustang, who had stopped about 20 feet away. The horse's intelligent eyes seemed to hold a plea, and Sam felt something stir in his chest that had been dormant for too long. "What have you brought me?" The Mustang took a careful step forward, then another, until he stood just beyond Sam's reach. The girl's eyes opened, and she looked down at the tall, bearded white man with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. She had heard the stories of her people about the white soldiers, about their cruelty and their broken promises. But this man's eyes held something different, a sadness that matched her own. "I won't hurt you, little one," Sam said gently, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're safe here." The Mustang nickered again, and somehow Sam understood. This was a gift, a responsibility, and perhaps, though he couldn't yet admit it to himself, a chance at redemption for all the hatred he had carried in his heart. Sam approached the Mustang and child with the same careful movements he used when gentling a spooked horse. The girl's dark eyes tracked his every motion, and he could see the wild fear barely contained beneath her exhausted exterior. She was like a wounded animal, ready to bolt or fight despite her weakened state. That's it. Easy now, Sam murmured, extending his weathered hand slowly. The Mustang remained perfectly still, as if understanding the delicate nature of the moment. When Sam's fingers finally touched the girl's arm, she flinched but didn't pull away. Her skin was burning with fever, and he could feel how thin she'd become. "You're burning up, child," he said softly. "Let me help you down." The girl's grip on the Mustang's mane tightened, and she shook her head weakly. Sam realized she was terrified of being separated from the horse that had saved her. He looked into the Mustang's intelligent eyes and made a decision that would have seemed impossible just minutes before. "He can stay," Sam said, gesturing toward the small corral beside his barn. "I'll put him in there with fresh water and hay. He'll be close by." Something in his tone must have convinced her, because the girl's grip slowly loosened. Sam lifted her gently from the Mustang's back, surprised by how light she was. She couldn't weigh more than 50 pounds, and her small body trembled against his chest. As he carried her toward the house, the Mustang followed without being led, entering the corral as if he understood the arrangement. Inside the modest ranch house, Sam laid the girl on Martha's old rocking chair by the fireplace. The interior was sparse but clean, a single room that served as kitchen, dining area and living space, with a small bedroom beyond. Everything spoke of a man living alone, practical and unadorned. "Water first," Sam muttered to himself, filling a tin cup from the pump in the kitchen. The girl's eyes followed his movements, and when he knelt beside her with the cup, she drank greedily despite her obvious wariness. "Slow now, or you'll make yourself sick," he cautioned, pulling the cup away gently. She looked at him with something that might have been gratitude, though her expression remained guarded. Sam had no experience with children, especially Apache children, but common sense told him she needed food and medicine. He heated water on the wood stove and began preparing a simple broth from jerky and wild onions. As he worked, he found himself talking to her in the same gentle tone he used with injured animals. "My name's Sam," he said, stirring the pot. "I know you probably don't understand much English, but I want you to know you're safe here. That Mustang of yours, he's got good sense. He knew you needed help." The girl watched him with those dark, intelligent eyes, and Sam had the unsettling feeling she understood more than she let on. When he brought her the warm broth, she accepted it without protest, though her hands shook as she held the bowl. "What's your name, little one?" he asked gently. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she spoke. "Aiyana." "Aiyana," Sam repeated, and she nodded slightly. "That's a pretty name. What does it mean?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Forever flowering." Sam felt something crack inside his chest at those words. This child who had lost everything still carried the hope of eternal blossoming. "That's beautiful," he said. "But you'll need an English name too if you're going to stay in this world. How about Hope?" The girl, Aiyana, considered this for a long moment. "Hope," she said finally, testing the word on her tongue. "Hope it is then," Sam said. "Aiyana Hope, you can be both." Over the next 3 days, Sam nursed the girl back to health with the same patience he showed his horses. He made her eat small amounts frequently, gave her willow bark tea for the fever, and cleaned her wounds with whiskey and water. She submitted to his ministrations with the resigned acceptance of someone who had learned that resistance was futile, but Sam sensed the steel beneath her surface. The Mustang remained in the corral, refusing to leave despite the open gate. Sam brought him hay and water, and noticed how the horse's presence seemed to calm the girl. When nightmares woke her, crying out in Apache, she would look through the window at the Mustang standing sentinel in the moonlight, and slowly settle back to sleep. On the 4th morning, Hope sat up on her own and spoke her first full sentence in English. "The horse has no name." Sam looked out at the magnificent animal and nodded. "You're right. What should we call him?" Hope was quiet for a long time, watching the Mustang through the window. Finally she said, "Tahone. It means brave one in my language." "Tahone," Sam repeated. "That's a good name, a strong name." As the days passed, Sam found himself changing in ways he hadn't expected. The silent house filled with the sounds of a child. her soft breathing, the whisper of her footsteps, the occasional word or question. He began to remember what it felt like to be needed, to care for someone other than himself. But he also knew that their peaceful existence couldn't last. The townspeople would learn of Hope's presence eventually, and Sam had no legal right to keep her. She belonged to the Apache people, or perhaps to the government agencies that dealt with Indian affairs. The thought of losing her, of watching her disappear into some mission school or reservation, filled him with an unexpected dread. For now, though, she was healing, and that was enough. Each day brought a little more color to her cheeks, a little more strength to her small frame. And each day, Sam found himself hoping a little more that somehow they could make this work. This unlikely family of a broken rancher, a lost Apache girl, and a wild Mustang who had brought them together. 3 weeks had passed since Tahone brought Hope to the ranch, and Sam had allowed himself to believe they might continue their quiet existence undisturbed. Hope had grown stronger, helping with small chores around the house and learning English with remarkable speed. She still spoke Apache to the Mustang, long conversations that Sam couldn't understand but respected. The bond between girl and horse remained unbreakable. Wherever Hope went, Tahone was never far behind. The illusion of peace shattered on a dusty Tuesday morning when 3 riders approached the ranch. Sam recognized them immediately. Sheriff Tom Bradley, a decent man but bound by law, Dr. Marcus Webb, the town's physician and self-appointed moral authority, and most troubling of all, Agent William Crane from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, a thin man with cold eyes and a permanent scowl. Hope was hanging laundry on the line when she spotted them. Her face went pale, and she dropped the wet sheet she was holding. "Sam," she whispered, running to where he stood on the porch. "It's all right, child," Sam said quietly, though his heart was pounding. "Stay behind me." The riders dismounted, and Sheriff Bradley removed his hat respectfully. "Morning, Sam. We need to talk." Agent Crane stepped forward without preamble. "Mr. McKenna, I understand you're harboring an Apache child on your property. This is a serious matter." Sam's jaw tightened. "I'm caring for an orphaned girl who was brought to me dying, nothing illegal about Christian charity." "The legality is precisely what's in question," Dr. Webb interjected, his voice sharp with disapproval. "This child belongs with her own people, or in a proper institution where she can be civilized." Hope pressed closer to Sam's side, and he felt her trembling. The word civilized hung in the air like a curse. "She's been through enough," Sam said firmly. "She's healing here, learning English, adapting well. There's no need to uproot her again." Agent Crane pulled out a leather portfolio and withdrew official-looking documents. "I have orders from the territorial government. All Apache children found off the reservation are to be transferred to the Carlisle Indian School in Pennsylvania. It's for their own good. They'll learn proper skills and be integrated into civilized society." Sam had heard stories about Carlisle, about children stripped of their names, their language, their culture. The thought of Hope disappearing into that system made his blood run cold. "She's not going anywhere," Sam said, his voice deadly quiet. Sheriff Bradley shifted uncomfortably. "Now, Sam, I know you mean well, but the law's the law. The child needs to be with her own kind." "Her own kind?" Sam's voice rose. "She's a 7-year-old girl who's lost everything. I'm the only family she has left." "You're not family," Dr. Webb snapped. "You're a white man playing at being a father to a savage child. It's unnatural and improper." The word savage hit Sam like a physical blow. He took a step forward, his fists clenched. "You watch your tongue, Webb. That's my daughter you're talking about." The words surprised everyone, including Sam himself. He had never spoken them aloud before, but hearing them now, he knew they were true. Hope was his daughter in every way that mattered. Agent Crane was unmoved. "Your emotional attachment doesn't change the facts, Mr. McKenna. The child will be transferred to federal custody immediately." "No," came a small but firm voice. Hope stepped out from behind Sam, her dark eyes blazing with defiance. "I will not go." Dr. Webb scoffed. "You don't have a choice, girl. You'll do as you're told." Hope lifted her chin higher. "My name is Aiyana. It means forever flowering. I am Apache, and I choose to stay with my father." The word father hung in the air, and Sam felt his throat tighten with emotion. She had chosen him, just as he had chosen her. Sheriff Bradley looked between them, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "Sam, you're making this harder than it needs to be. The girl will be better off with proper schooling." "She's getting proper schooling right here," Sam replied. "She can read, write, and cipher. She knows how to run a household and handle horses. What more does she need?" Agent Crane's patience was wearing thin. "Mr. McKenna, I'm prepared to have you arrested for interfering with federal Indian policy. Don't make this more difficult than necessary." It was then that Tahone made his presence known. The Mustang had been grazing in the far pasture, but now he came thundering toward the group, his hooves pounding the earth like war drums. He slid to a stop between Hope and the three men, his ears pinned back and his teeth bared. "Control that animal!" Agent Crane demanded, backing away. Hope placed her hand on Tahone's neck, and the Mustang immediately calmed, though his eyes remained fixed on the strangers. "He protects me," she said simply. "As Sam protects me." Sam saw his chance. "Gentlemen, I'm willing to make a compromise. Give us time to make this legal. I'll file papers to adopt Hope properly. If the territorial court approves, she stays. If not—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Agent Crane shook his head. "The federal government doesn't recognize adoptions of Indian children by white families. It's against policy." "Then change the policy," Sam shot back, "or test it in court. Either way, you're not taking her today." Sheriff Bradley held up his hands. "Now hold on, everyone. Sam's got a point about legal process. Maybe we should give him a chance to file the papers, let a judge decide." Dr. Webb protested vigorously, but Agent Crane was calculating. A court battle would take time and resources, and the outcome was uncertain. "Very well," he said finally. "You have 30 days to file your adoption papers. If they're denied or if you fail to file, the child comes with me to Carlisle. No further delays." As the three men mounted their horses and rode away, Sam felt both relief and dread. He had bought them time. But time for what? The odds were stacked against them, and he knew it. Hope looked up at him with those dark, trusting eyes. "Will they take me away, Sam?" Sam knelt down to her level, taking her small hands in his calloused ones. "Not if I can help it, little one. Not if I can help it." But as he watched the dust cloud from the departing riders, Sam wondered if love would be enough to fight the laws and prejudices of a world that saw only the color of a child's skin, not the size of her heart. The courthouse in Prescott sat like a fortress of red brick and territorial authority, its windows glaring down at Sam as he climbed the steps, with Hope's small hand clasped firmly in his. 2 weeks had passed since Agent Crane's ultimatum, and Sam had spent every day since then riding between lawyers, judges, and government offices, trying to navigate the labyrinth of legal requirements that stood between him and his daughter. "Remember what we practiced," Sam whispered to Hope as they approached the heavy oak doors. "Answer their questions honestly, but don't let them rattle you." Hope nodded, her face set with determination that seemed far too mature for her 8 years. She wore her best dress, one of Martha's old gowns that Sam had painstakingly altered to fit her small frame. Her long black hair was neatly braided, and she carried herself with the quiet dignity that never failed to amaze him. Inside the courthouse, the air was thick with tobacco smoke and the murmur of legal proceedings. Sam's lawyer, a young man named Jonathan Pierce, who had recently arrived from back east, met them in the hallway. Pierce was idealistic and eager, but Sam could see the worry in his eyes. "Mr. McKenna," Pierce said quietly, "I need to be honest with you. Judge Morrison is old-fashioned in his views, and the territorial attorney has filed a motion to dismiss our petition outright. They're arguing that federal Indian policy supersedes territorial adoption law." Sam's jaw tightened. "Then we fight harder." "There's more," Pierce continued reluctantly. Agent Crane has brought in witnesses, people from town who are willing to testify that the adoption is inappropriate. Hope looked up at Sam, and he saw the fear she was trying so hard to hide. What kind of witnesses? Dr. Webb, certainly. Some of the townspeople who think a white man raising an Apache child is somehow improper or dangerous. The courtroom was packed when their case was called. Sam was surprised to see familiar faces in the gallery, some hostile, but others wearing expressions of support. Old Henrik Larsson, the German blacksmith who had always been fair to everyone regardless of color, sat in the front row. Behind him, Sam spotted Maria Santos, the Mexican woman who ran the boarding house, and several of the ranch hands from neighboring spreads. Judge Morrison was a severe-looking man in his 60s, with steel-grey hair and eyes that seemed to weigh everything they saw. He studied the adoption papers with meticulous care before looking up at Sam and Hope. "This is a most unusual case," Morrison began, his voice carrying across the silent courtroom. "Mr. McKenna, you seek to adopt a child of Apache heritage. The federal government argues that such an adoption violates established Indian policy. How do you respond?" Sam stood, his hat in his hands. "Your Honor, Hope came to me as an orphan, near death. I've cared for her as my own daughter for over a month now. She's thriving, learning, and happy. I can't see how taking her away from the only family she has left serves anyone's interests." "The child has a family," Agent Crane interjected from his seat. "She has a people. The Apache Nation that left her to die in the desert." Sam's voice rose, and Judge Morrison gavelled for order. "Mr. McKenna," the judge warned, "you will address the court respectfully." Sam took a deep breath. "Forgive me, Your Honor, but this child wasn't abandoned by choice. Her village was destroyed, her family killed. I found her dying and I saved her life. That has to count for something." The territorial attorney, a thin man named Harrison, stood to present the government's case. "Your Honor, while Mr. McKenna's intentions may be admirable, the law is clear. Indian children belong with their own people in institutions designed to educate and civilize them. The Carlisle School offers Hope a chance to become a productive member of society." "And what am I offering her?" Sam asked, unable to contain himself. "A home, a father's love, a chance to be both Apache and American." Judge Morrison studied Hope, who had remained silent throughout the proceedings. "Young lady, do you understand what's happening here?" Hope stood, her voice clear and strong. "Yes, sir. They want to take me away from my father." "Mr. McKenna is not your father," Harrison said coldly. "He's a stranger who—" "He saved my life," Hope interrupted, her dark eyes flashing. "He fed me when I was hungry, cared for me when I was sick, and taught me to read. He calls me daughter, and I call him father. What makes a family if not love?" A murmur ran through the courtroom, and Sam felt his chest swell with pride and heartbreak. This brave little girl was fighting for their family with everything she had. Dr. Webb was called to testify, and his words were as sharp as Sam had expected. "The arrangement is unnatural," he declared. "A white man cannot properly raise an Indian child. The girl needs to be with her own kind, learning proper Christian values and civilized behavior." "Are you suggesting I haven't taught her Christian values?" Sam asked when given the chance to cross-examine. "I'm suggesting that blood tells, Mr. McKenna. The savage instincts will emerge eventually. It's in her nature." Sam felt the rage building in his chest, but it was Hope who responded. Standing up in the gallery, she spoke with quiet dignity. "Dr. Webb, I read from the Bible every night with my father. I know the commandments, and I know that 'thou shalt not bear false witness' is among them. You speak of savagery, but I see it in your words, not in my heart." The courtroom erupted in whispers, and Judge Morrison called for order. When the room quieted, he looked directly at Hope. "That was well spoken, young lady. Tell me, if you could choose, where would you want to live?" "With my father," Hope said without hesitation. "And with Tahone." "Tahone?" "My horse. The Mustang who brought me to Sam. He's part of our family, too." Judge Morrison actually smiled at that. "I see. And you feel you can honor both your Apache heritage and your new life with Mr. McKenna? Yes, sir. My father doesn't ask me to forget who I am. He helps me remember while also helping me become who I want to be. As the afternoon wore on, more witnesses spoke. Some testified to Sam's good character, others to his fitness as a father figure. Henrik Larsson spoke of Sam's fairness and kindness, while Maria Santos described how gently Sam had cared for his dying wife, proving his capacity for love and sacrifice. But the most powerful testimony came from an unexpected source. As the proceedings were about to conclude, the courtroom doors opened and an elderly Apache man entered, his long gray hair braided with silver ornaments. He wore a mixture of traditional and white man's clothing, and his presence commanded immediate attention. "I am Joseph Crowfeather," he said in accented but clear English. "I speak for the girl's grandmother, who was my sister." The courtroom fell silent. Agent Crane looked stunned. This was not part of his plan. "The white man speaks truly," Crowfeather continued. "The child was left to die. The Mustang brought her to safety. In Apache law, this makes the man and the horse both her protectors. The spirits chose her path." Hope's eyes filled with tears as she looked at this connection to her past. Crowfeather nodded to her with grave respect. "The girl has lost one family," he said, "but she has found another. To take her from those who saved her would be to anger the spirits and dishonor the dead." Judge Morrison leaned forward. "Are you saying the Apache people would accept this adoption?" "I say the child has chosen her path, and the spirits have blessed it. Who are we to argue with the wisdom of the Mustang and the love of a good man?" As the sun set behind the courthouse windows, Judge Morrison called for a recess. "I will render my decision tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Court is adjourned." That night, Sam sat on his porch with Hope beside him, watching Tajon graze in the moonlight. Tomorrow would bring either the happiest day of his life or the most heartbreaking. Either way, he knew he had fought with everything he had for the family that meant more to him than his own life. The morning sun cast long shadows across the courthouse steps as Sam and Hope made their way inside for the final time. Sam's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his tie, the same one he had worn to Martha's funeral, the only formal clothing he owned. Hope walked beside him with quiet dignity, her small hand steady in his, as if she were drawing strength from some deep well of courage. The courtroom was even more crowded than the day before. Word had spread throughout the territory about the unusual case, and people had come from miles around to witness the outcome. Sam noticed that the gallery was roughly divided, supporters on one side, opponents on the other, with a few curious onlookers scattered throughout. Judge Morrison entered precisely at 9 o'clock, his black robes rustling as he took his seat. The bailiff called for order, and the room fell silent except for the ticking of the large clock on the wall. In the matter of the adoption petition of Samuel McKenna for the minor child known as Hope, also called Aiyana, the judge began, his voice carrying clearly through the still air. "This court has spent considerable time weighing the evidence and the law." Sam felt Hope's grip tighten on his hand. He squeezed back, trying to send her all the strength and love he possessed. "The federal government argues that established Indian policy prohibits such adoptions," Morrison continued. "They claim the child belongs in an institution where she can be properly educated and integrated into white society. The territorial attorney has presented compelling legal precedents." Sam's heart sank. The formal language suggested the worst. "However," the judge continued, and Sam felt a flicker of hope, "this court must also consider the best interests of the child, the testimony of witnesses, and the unique circumstances of this case." Judge Morrison looked directly at Hope. "Young lady, would you please stand?" Hope rose, her chin lifted with the same proud bearing Sam had seen in her from the beginning. "I have presided over many cases in my 30 years on the bench," Morrison said. "I have rarely seen a child speak with such wisdom and courage. Your words yesterday moved this court deeply." He turned to Sam. "Mr. McKenna, your transformation from a bitter widower to a devoted father has been remarked upon by numerous witnesses. The love between you and this child is evident to all who observe you." Agent Crane shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly sensing the direction of the judge's thoughts. The testimony of Joseph Crow Feather was particularly significant, Morrison continued. The fact that the Apache people, through their elder, have given their blessing to this adoption carries great weight in these proceedings. The judge paused, gathering his thoughts. The law is meant to serve justice, not to perpetuate injustice. To remove a thriving child from a loving home simply because of racial differences would be a travesty of the justice this court is sworn to uphold. Sam felt his breath catch. Was it possible? Furthermore, Morrison said, the child has demonstrated remarkable adaptability and intelligence. She has learned English, can read and write, and has shown respect for both her Apache heritage and her adoptive family's values. The argument that she needs institutional care is not supported by the evidence. Dr. Webb rose partially from his seat, but the judge's stern look made him sit back down. Therefore, Judge Morrison announced, his voice ringing with authority, this court finds that the adoption of the minor child Hope, also known as Aiyana, by Samuel McKenna, is in the best interests of the child and is hereby approved. The courtroom erupted. Sam felt his knees nearly buckle as Hope threw her arms around him, tears streaming down both their faces. Behind them, the gallery was a mixture of cheers and angry protests, but Sam heard only the sound of his daughter's voice whispering, "We did it, Papa. We're a family." Agent Crane was on his feet immediately. Your Honor, I must protest. This decision contradicts federal Indian policy. Judge Morrison's gavel came down hard. Mr. Crane, this court has jurisdiction over territorial adoption matters. If the federal government wishes to challenge this decision, they may do so through proper appeals channels. Until then, my ruling stands. As the crowd began to disperse, Sam found himself surrounded by well-wishers. Henrik Larsson pumped his hand enthusiastically, while Maria Santos kissed Hope on both cheeks. Even some of the initially skeptical townspeople offered grudging congratulations. Joseph Crow Feather approached them as they prepared to leave. The spirits are pleased, he said solemnly. The child has found her path. He looked directly at Hope. Remember who you are, little one. You carry the blood of two peoples now, Apache and McKenna. Let both make you strong. Hope nodded gravely. I will remember, grandfather. The old man smiled at the title. Your grandmother would be proud. She always said you were born to bridge two worlds. As they walked out of the courthouse into the bright Arizona sunshine, Sam felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. Hope, his daughter, legally and truly now, skipped beside him, her face radiant with joy. Can we go home now, Papa? She asked. Yes, sweetheart, we can go home. They rode back to the ranch in the wagon, Hope chattering excitedly about their plans for the future. She wanted to learn to read Apache stories as well as English ones, to teach Tahoe new tricks, and to help Sam expand the ranch. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and Sam found himself laughing more than he had in years. Tahoe was waiting for them in the corral, as if he had somehow sensed the outcome. When Hope ran to him, the Mustang nickered softly and nuzzled her hair. Sam watched the reunion with a full heart, marveling at the strange chain of events that had brought them all together. That evening, as the sun set over the desert, Sam and Hope sat on the porch, while Tahoe grazed nearby. Hope was reading aloud from one of Martha's old books, her voice clear and confident. The words washed over Sam like a blessing, reminding him of all the evenings he had dreamed of, but never expected to have. Papa, Hope said, looking up from her book, what does forever flowering really mean? Sam considered the question carefully. I think it means that something beautiful continues to grow, no matter what hardships it faces. Like a flower that blooms year after year, getting stronger with each season. Hope nodded thoughtfully. Like our family? Exactly like our family, Sam said, pulling her close. We've weathered the storm, and now we can grow together. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Sam reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. A wild Mustang, a dying Apache girl, and a bitter widower had somehow become a family bound by love, stronger than blood, deeper than law, and more enduring than the prejudices of their time. Hope had indeed proven to be forever flowering, blooming in the desert of loss, growing stronger through adversity, and bringing new life to a man who had thought his own story was over. And Sam had learned that family wasn't about blood or race or the approval of others. It was about choice, commitment, and the willingness to fight for those you love. In the distance, a coyote howled, and Tahoni lifted his head to listen. The wild Mustang remained with them by choice, just as Hope had chosen Sam, and Sam had chosen her. In the harsh beauty of the Arizona territory, three unlikely souls had found each other and created something beautiful, a family that would endure whatever challenges the future might bring. The McKenna family was complete, and Hope would indeed flower forever in the love of her chosen father, and the freedom of the land that had made them all stronger.